On my 60th birthday, I opened the door to a crowd, but it wasn't a party. My son stood there holding a sign, "Congrats to the new owner." Behind him, a truck unloading my furniture. "You signed the papers," he said. I just smiled. I knew this day would come, and I brought my own surprise. I didn't stay silent. "Yes, I did sign them, didn't I?" I replied, my voice steady despite the chill running down my spine. Michael's smile, so much like his father's, didn't reach his eyes. Those cold blue eyes that once looked up at me with childish wonder now assessed me like I was nothing but a hurdle finally cleared. The movers continued unloading my life's possessions onto the sidewalk. My neighbor Dorothy peeked through her curtains across the street. I gave her a small wave, and she disappeared from view. I'd already packed a small suitcase that morning. Clothes, toiletries, and a locked wooden box containing everything I needed for what would come next. "The retirement community has your room ready," Michael said, checking his watch. "We should get going. Rebecca's waiting in the car with the kids." Rebecca, my daughter-in-law, sat in their gleaming SUV, not bothering to step out. She gave me a rehearsed smile and a practiced wave through the window. The grandchildren were absorbed in their tablets, unaware of the significance of this day. "Let me just grab my purse," I said, stepping back inside the house I'd lived in for 35 years. The house where I'd raised Michael after his father left us. The house I'd paid off by working 2 jobs for 15 years. The living room still smelled like the birthday cake I'd baked that morning. Thinking, hoping, they might actually come to celebrate. Foolish, perhaps, but old habits die hard. I ran my fingers across the dining table where Michael had done his homework, where we'd shared thousands of meals, where I'd taught him to count and read and dream. I picked up my purse and the small suitcase I'd prepared, then took one last look around. The rest of my belongings would be sold or discarded, I knew. Michael had made it clear the retirement homerooms were cozy, his euphemism for cramped. "Ready, Mom?" Michael called from the doorway, impatience edging his voice. "Yes, dear." I stepped out and locked the door behind me, handing him the key. "All yours now." The ride to Sunny Pines retirement community was quiet. Michael tried small talk about the weather, about how nice the facility was supposed to be, about how this was really for the best. Rebecca nodded along, occasionally glancing back at me through the rearview mirror. The children remained glued to their screens. "You'll have activities, friends your own age," Michael said as we pulled into the parking lot. "And the staff is there 24/7 if you need anything." "How thoughtful," I replied. Sunny Pines looked exactly as I expected. Beige walls, beige carpets, beige furniture. The smell of industrial cleaner barely masked the underlying scent of medicine and decay. Residents shuffled past with walkers and wheelchairs, some with vacant stares, others with the sharp, angry eyes of those who know they've been discarded. The facility director, Mrs. Chambers, greeted us with practiced warmth. "Welcome to Sunny Pines, Mrs. Wilson. We're so happy to have you join our family." Family. The word hung in the air like a bad joke. My cozy room was indeed tiny. A bed, a dresser, a small television, and a bathroom barely large enough to turn around in. The window overlooked the parking lot. Michael and Rebecca stood awkwardly by the door as I set my suitcase on the bed. "It's perfect," I lied. "Thank you for arranging this." "Well, we should get going," Michael said, relief washing over his face. "The kids have soccer practice at 4. "Of course," I said. "Don't let me keep you." Rebecca gave me a quick, stiff hug. "We'll visit soon," she promised, another lie to add to the pile. Michael hesitated, then stepped forward to embrace me. "This is for the best, Mom," he whispered. "The house was too much for you to manage alone." I patted his back. "I understand." And I did understand, more than he knew. I understood that the house, now worth 3 times what I'd paid for it, would be sold immediately. I understood that the money would vanish into Michael's struggling business, his mounting debts, his desperate attempt to maintain the facade of success. I understood that the papers I'd signed, which he'd rushed through during my supposed senior moment, had transferred everything I owned to him. What he didn't understand was that I'd been watching the signs for years, the unexplained visits to my bank, the missing financial documents. the sudden interest in my will and assets after decades of minimal contact, the accidental addition of his name to my accounts for emergency purposes. As they left, promising to call soon, I sat on the edge of the thin mattress and waited until the sound of their car faded away. Then I pulled out my phone and dialed a number. "They've gone," I said when Dorothy answered. "Is everything ready?" "Just as you planned, Helen," my oldest friend replied. "Martin has all the documents prepared, and Irene is standing by. Are you sure about this?" I looked around the small room that was supposed to be my final stop before the grave. "More sure than I've ever been," I replied. After hanging up, I opened the wooden box I'd brought with me. Inside were copies of every document Michael thought he'd destroyed, bank statements showing transfers he'd made from my accounts to his, recordings of conversations where he'd discussed his plans with Rebecca, and most importantly, the real papers I'd signed, not a property transfer, but evidence of his financial fraud, witnessed and notarized by my lawyer without Michael's knowledge. I placed everything back in the box and lay down on the bed, staring at the ceiling. For 30 years, I'd given everything for my son. I'd missed opportunities, relationships, dreams, all to make sure he had every advantage. And this was how he repaid me. Tomorrow would be the first day of the rest of my life, and the beginning of the end of his. The thought should have made me sad, should have broken my heart. Instead, I felt something else stirring inside me, something I hadn't felt in decades. Power. I thought back to the sign he'd so proudly displayed. "Congrats to the new owner." How fitting it would be when those words took on a whole new meaning. As I drifted off to sleep in that sterile little room, I didn't cry. I didn't mourn. I simply planned. And somewhere, deep inside, the young woman I used to be, fierce, unstoppable, unbroken, awakened from a long slumber. Morning arrived at Sunny Pines with the clatter of medication carts and the smell of institutional oatmeal. I'd barely slept, but it didn't matter. I felt more awake than I had in years. I spent my first day observing the routines of the place, nodding politely at staff and residents alike. I ate the bland food, attended a mind-numbing bingo session, and smiled through a welcome orientation that felt more like prison processing than anything else. "Mrs. Wilson, you seem to be adjusting well," Mrs. Chambers said, stopping me in the hallway. "Many new residents struggle at first." "I've always been adaptable," I replied. Though I was wondering, is there a restriction on visitors or leaving the premises? "Not at all. This isn't a locked facility," she assured me, though her eyes narrowed slightly. "You're free to come and go as you please, and visitors are welcome from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. daily." Perfect. That afternoon, Dorothy arrived with a basket of muffins and an envelope tucked inside her purse. We sat in the small garden area behind the building, far from prying ears. "You were right about everything, Helen," she said quietly, handing me the envelope. "Martin found 3 separate accounts Michael opened in your name. The mortgage he took out on your house was just the beginning." I opened the envelope and examined the bank statements. Nearly $500,000, my life savings, my retirement fund, the money that was supposed to sustain me in my old age, had been systematically drained over the past 2 years. "Did Martin contact the detective?" I asked, keeping my voice level despite the numbers swimming before my eyes. "Yes. Detective Irene Kemp will meet you tomorrow. She says she's seen this kind of elder financial abuse before, and with your documentation, you have a solid case." Dorothy paused, studying my face. "Are you sure you want to go through with this? He's still your son." I folded the papers carefully and placed them back in the envelope. "The boy I raised died a long time ago, Dorothy. I just didn't want to admit it. That night, I lay in bed thinking about Michael as a child, his gap-toothed grin when he lost his first tooth, his proud face when he learned to ride a bike, his tears when his father left and never looked back. I'd promised myself then that I would give him everything, be everything, so he would never feel that abandonment again. Where had I gone wrong? When had my sweet boy turned into this calculating stranger? Was it when I paid for his college and he dropped out after 2 semesters? When I co-signed for his first business loan, which he defaulted on? When I remortgaged my house to bail out his second failed venture? Or was it more gradual? each sacrifice I made teaching him that I existed only to serve his needs. The next morning, Detective Kemp met me at a small coffee shop 3 blocks from Sunny Pines. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "Mrs. Wilson, I've reviewed the initial documents your lawyer sent over," she said after we ordered. "What we're looking at here is textbook elder financial abuse. Your son has systematically exploited his position of trust to defraud you of substantial assets." "And what can be done about it?" I asked. "We can pursue this both criminally and civilly," she explained. "Criminal charges would involve fraud, embezzlement, and elder abuse. The civil side would focus on recovering your assets and potentially additional damages." "Could he go to jail?" Detective Kemp nodded. "With the evidence you've collected, it's highly possible. Financial crimes against the elderly are taken very seriously these days." I stirred my coffee slowly. "What happens next?" "That depends on what you want, Mrs. Wilson. We can move quickly, freeze accounts, file charges, potentially have him arrested within days. Or we can build a more comprehensive case, which takes longer but might be more devastating in the long run." "I want everything done by the book," I said firmly. "I want it to be thorough, irrefutable, and public. And I want to be the one to tell him when it happens." Detective Kemp's lips curved into a slight smile. "I understand perfectly." Over the next 2 weeks, I settled into a routine at Sunny Pines. I attended activities, made a few acquaintances, and never complained. The staff thought I was adjusting wonderfully. Michael called exactly once, a brief 2-minute conversation where he asked if I needed anything, then quickly explained he was swamped at work and had to go. What he didn't know was that every day when I went for my afternoon walk, I was meeting with Detective Kemp, my lawyer Martin, or Dorothy. We tracked down every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, every manipulated document. We found evidence that Michael had been planning this for at least 3 years. Emails to Rebecca discussing how to handle Mom's money once they had control. Consultations with shady financial advisors about hiding assets. Even a draft listing for my house that had been prepared months before I supposedly signed it over. The most painful discovery came when Martin found a series of text messages Michael had sent to Rebecca the day before my move. "Finally getting rid of the old lady tomorrow. House should sell for at least $600K. We can pay off the cards, finish the basement, maybe even get that boat you wanted." Rebecca's reply, "Thank God. If I had to sit through one more of her boring birthday dinners, I'd scream. Just make sure she doesn't make a scene tomorrow." I read those messages sitting in Martin's office, my hands perfectly steady. Dorothy cried when she saw them. Martin looked away, embarrassed for me perhaps, but I felt nothing but cold clarity. "We have everything we need," I told them. Now we moved to Phase 2. Phase 2 began with a call to my grandson, Justin, Michael's oldest at 19. He was away at college, the same college I'd been quietly paying tuition for, unbeknownst to Michael, who told everyone he was footing the bill. "Grandma, is everything okay at the home?" Justin sounded genuinely concerned, which warmed me slightly. "I'm fine, dear, but I needed to talk to you about something important. It's about your college tuition." The silence on the other end told me everything. "Dad said you were confused about things lately," he finally said. "That you thought you were paying for my school, but it was actually him." "I see," I said calmly. "And did your father explain where his money came from?" Another long pause. "Justin, I'm going to send you some documents. I want you to look at them carefully and then decide for yourself what's been happening." After I hung up, I sent Justin copies of the bank transfers showing the money moving from my account to his tuition payments, along with some of the text messages between his parents discussing how to keep me out of the way. That evening, my phone rang. Justin's voice was tight with anger. "Is it all true?" he demanded. "Did Dad really steal your money and dump you in that place?" "Yes," I said simply. "I'll come get you." "No," I interrupted. "That's not what I need from you. What I need is for you to stop by your parents' house tomorrow evening around 6. Bring your sister if you can. There's something important happening that you should witness." "What are you going to do?" he asked, his voice smaller now, uncertain. "I'm going to teach your father the lesson I should have taught him 30 years ago," I replied. that everything in this world has a price. After hanging up, I called Detective Kemp. "We're ready," I told her. "Tomorrow at 6. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. In my dreams, I wasn't old anymore. I was young and strong, standing tall against a storm, bending but never breaking. Tomorrow, Michael would learn what I had known all along. I wasn't the weak, confused old woman he thought I was. I was his mother, and I had taught him everything he knew, but not everything I knew. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Today would change everything. I showered carefully, taking time with my appearance. I chose a simple navy dress I'd kept in my suitcase, the one I used to wear to parent-teacher conferences, board meetings, and funerals. A dress for serious occasions. Mrs. Chambers noticed the change immediately when I came to breakfast. "My, don't you look nice today, Mrs. Wilson? Special plans?" "Family visit," I replied with a smile that revealed nothing. "My son is coming by this evening." "How wonderful. I'll make sure the visitor lounge is prepared." "That won't be necessary," I said. "I'll be meeting him at his house." Her eyebrows rose slightly. "Oh? Will you be staying overnight?" "No, I'll be returning. This is just business that needs addressing." I spent the morning reviewing everything with Martin one last time in his office. The documentation was impeccable. Financial records, text messages, emails, recorded phone calls, and witness statements from my bank manager and neighbors who had observed Michael's behavior over the years. "The restraining order is ready," Martin said, sliding the document across his desk. "Once it's served, he won't be allowed to contact you or come near Sunny Pines. And the power of attorney revocation? Filed with the courts yesterday. He no longer has any legal authority over your affairs." Martin hesitated. "Helen, I need to ask once more. Are you absolutely certain you want to go this route? Criminal charges against one's own child?" I met his eyes steadily. "Martin, when my husband left, he took everything but our son. I built my life around Michael. I worked 60-hour weeks so he could have opportunities I never had. I postponed dreams, declined promotions that would have required travel, even turned down a marriage proposal because Michael said he wasn't comfortable with the man. I paused, letting the weight of decades settle between us. I gave him everything, and he repaid me by treating me as nothing more than an obstacle to his inheritance." Martin nodded slowly. "I understand." "No, you don't," I said quietly. "But Michael will." Detective Kemp picked me up at 3 o'clock. We drove first to the police station, where I formally filed my complaint and signed the final paperwork. "Officers Jennings and Morales will follow us to the house," she explained as we left. "They'll remain outside unless needed, but their presence often helps keep these situations from escalating." "Will he be arrested today?" I asked. "That depends on his reaction. We have enough to take him in, but if he remains calm and agrees to cooperate, we might schedule a formal surrender later this week." She glanced at me. "Is that acceptable to you?" I nodded. "As long as he understands exactly what's happening, I don't need to see him in handcuffs today." We arrived at my old house, now Michael's house, at precisely 5:45 p.m. 2 police cruisers parked discreetly down the street. Dorothy was already waiting in her car across the road. She would serve as an additional witness. At 5:55, Justin's car pulled up. He got out with his sister, Lily, who at 17 looked confused and worried. They approached cautiously. "Grandma?" Lily's voice wavered. "What's going on?" "Justin wouldn't tell me anything." I embraced her gently. "I'll explain everything soon, dear. We're just setting some things right." Justin stood stiffly, anger radiating from him. "Dad's inside. I texted that we were stopping by to pick up some of Lily's old things from the storage room." "Good," I said. "Detective Kemp, this is my grandson Justin and my granddaughter Lily." Kemp nodded professionally but kept her explanation minimal. "I'm here to assist your grandmother with some legal matters." At exactly 6 o'clock, I walked up the path to my former home and rang the doorbell. The sound echoed through the house, the same chime that had announced visitors for 3 decades. Michael opened the door, surprise registering on his face. "Mom, what are you doing here?" His eyes darted past me to Detective Kemp, then to his children standing by the street. "Is something wrong?" "May we come in, Michael? There's something important we need to discuss." His face tightened with suspicion, but he stepped back, allowing us entry. Rebecca appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. The house already looked different. My furniture rearranged, my photos removed from walls, new paint in the living room. "Helen," Rebecca said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "This is unexpected. We were just about to have dinner." "This won't take long," I replied. "Please, let's all sit down." Michael frowned but gestured toward the dining room. Justin and Lily followed, tension visible in their posture. Everyone took seats around my old oak table, the one where we'd celebrated birthdays, holidays, and graduations for years. "Michael, Rebecca," I began, my voice steady. "I'm here with Detective Kemp from the Financial Crimes Unit. I've filed formal charges against you for elder abuse, fraud, embezzlement, and theft." The silence that followed was absolute. Rebecca's face drained of color. Michael stared at me, uncomprehending. "What the hell are you talking about?" he finally managed. Detective Kemp placed a thick folder on the table. "Mr. Wilson, we have documented evidence that you systematically defrauded your mother of her life savings, forged her signature on multiple documents, transferred property illegally, and conspired to isolate her in a care facility against her will." "That's ridiculous," Michael sputtered, looking from the detective to me. "Mom signed everything willingly. She's confused. Has been for months. That's why we arranged Sunny Pines." "I'm not confused, Michael," I said calmly. "I never have been. I've been watching you steal from me for 2 years. I let you think you were succeeding because I needed evidence." Michael's face darkened. "You don't know what you're saying. Rebecca, call Dr. Winters. Mom's having an episode." Detective Kemp opened the folder. "Perhaps these will refresh your memory, Mr. Wilson." She laid out bank statements, copies of forged checks, and printouts of emails. "We have records of you transferring $478,000 from your mother's accounts to your personal and business accounts over 26 months. We have forged signatures on property transfer documents. We have text messages between you and your wife discussing your plans to, quote, get rid of the old lady and cash in on the house." Lily gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Justin stood abruptly, moving to stand behind my chair. Rebecca found her voice first. "These are taken out of context. We were trying to protect Helen's assets. She wasn't managing them properly. Is that why you went shopping at Nordstrom the day after you put me in Sunny Pines?" I asked quietly. $3,000 on my credit card. Was that protecting my assets too? Rebecca's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Michael's shock was transforming into rage. "You set us up," he hissed. "Your own family. All this time, pretending to be this helpless old woman, you were plotting against us." "No, Michael. I was protecting myself from you. There's a difference," Detective Kemp continued, her voice professional. "Mr. Wilson, we're prepared to move forward with criminal charges. The district attorney is particularly interested in the elder abuse aspects of this case. The fraud alone carries a potential sentence of 5 to 10 years. The word years seemed to penetrate Michael's anger. Fear flickered across his face. "This is insane. Mom, you can't do this to me. To us. Think about the kids." "I am thinking about them," I said, glancing at Justin and Lily. "They deserve to know the truth about their parents." "You ungrateful bitch," he spat, mask finally dropping completely. "After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me?" I repeated, my voice deadly quiet. "What exactly have you done for me, Michael? Was it when you dropped out of the college I paid for? When you defaulted on the business loan I co-signed? When you borrowed against my house to fund your third failed venture? Or perhaps when you decided to throw me away in a care home so you could finally cash in on what little I had left?" He stood suddenly, towering over the table. "You owe me. Who do you think took care of you all these years?" "I took care of myself. I always have." Justin stepped forward, placing himself between us. "Dad, stop it." "Stay out of this," Michael snapped. "You don't understand." "I understand plenty," Justin said, his voice shaking. "I saw the bank statements. I know who really paid for my tuition. It was Grandma, not you." Rebecca turned to Michael, confusion on her face. "What is he talking about?" Before he could answer, I slid another document across the table. This is a restraining order, Michael. As of now, you are legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of Sunny Pines. You can't be serious, he whispered. I've never been more serious, I replied. Additionally, Martin has filed for emergency injunctions, freezing all accounts containing my stolen funds. The house sale you've already arranged is now on hold pending criminal investigation. Michael's face contorted. You'll destroy this family. No, I said, rising from my chair. You did that yourself long ago. I'm simply acknowledging what already exists. I turned to my grandchildren. Justin, Lily, I'm sorry you have to witness this. None of this is your fault, and nothing changes between us. I'll always be your grandmother. Lily was crying silently. Justin's jaw was set in a hard line, but he nodded. Detective, I said, I believe we're finished here for now. As we turned to leave, Michael's voice stopped me at the door. Desperate now, the anger giving way to panic. Mom, please. We can work this out. I'll pay everything back. Don't do this. I looked at my son, this stranger wearing the face of the boy I'd raised, and felt nothing but a cold, clear certainty. It's already done, Michael. Walking out of that house, I didn't look back. The weight that had pressed on my chest for years seemed to lift with each step. Behind me, I could hear Rebecca's shrill accusations, Michael's desperate denials, the crumbling of the facade they'd built. In the car, Detective Kemp glanced at me. Are you all right, Mrs. Wilson? Yes, I said, surprised to find it was true. For the first time in a very long time, I think I am. The days that followed moved with surprising speed. I didn't return to Sunny Pines that night. Instead, Dorothy had prepared her guest room, where I stayed while the legal machinery I'd set in motion began to turn. You look different, Dorothy observed over coffee the next morning. Lighter somehow. I feel it, I admitted. Like I've set down something I've been carrying for decades. My phone had been buzzing constantly. Missed calls and desperate texts from Michael, tearful voicemails from Rebecca, confused messages from distant relatives who'd begun hearing rumors. I ignored them all. The only calls I answered were from Justin and Lily. Both were staying with friends, unwilling to return home while their parents' world collapsed around them. Dad got served with more papers this morning, Justin told me on the third day. He's drinking a lot. Mom keeps crying and calling her parents. Are you okay? I asked, concerned not for Michael, but for his children caught in the whirlwind. I'm processing, he said, sounding older than his 19 years. Lily's taking it harder. She didn't know about any of it. I never wanted to hurt either of you, I said softly. I know, Grandma, but we needed to see the truth. On the 5th day, Martin called with news. The DA has officially filed criminal charges. 10 counts of financial elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and grand theft. Michael was arrested this morning but posted bail by afternoon. And the house? I asked. The court has issued a temporary stay on any property transactions. It remains in legal limbo for now. He can't sell it, but ownership is disputed until the criminal case resolves. That evening, Detective Kemp visited Dorothy's house with an update. He's hired Stanley Greenberg as his attorney, she said, accepting a cup of tea. Expensive, high profile, specializes in white-collar crime. Can he get Michael off? I asked. Unlikely. The evidence is overwhelming, and financial crimes leave a clear paper trail. What Greenberg will probably do is negotiate a plea deal to minimize jail time. She paused. Mrs. Wilson, I should prepare you. The publicity is about to intensify. Elder abuse cases like this sometimes attract media attention, especially when the amounts are substantial. I understand. Your son's reputation will be destroyed. His business contacts, social standing, credit rating, all gone. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the question carefully before answering. Detective, when Michael was 7, he fell from a tree in our backyard and broke his arm. In the emergency room, while waiting for x-rays, he looked up at me and asked if I was mad at him for climbing too high after I'd warned him not to. Do you know what I told him? She shook her head. I said that sometimes the consequence is the lesson, that I wasn't mad, but that the pain he felt was teaching him something important about listening and being careful. I sipped my tea. Michael is 58 years old now. It's well past time he learned that actions have consequences. The next day, the story broke in the local news. Prominent businessman charged with elder abuse against mother ran above a photo of Michael leaving the courthouse, hand raised to block the cameras. By evening, it had been picked up by regional outlets and was spreading on social media. I received a call from an unexpected source, Michael's ex-business partner Thomas, whom Michael had forced out of their company 5 years earlier. "Mrs. Wilson, I just heard what happened. He hesitated. "I wanted you to know that what Michael did to you, it's part of a pattern. There were financial irregularities when we were partners too. Client funds that disappeared, invoices that didn't add up. Did you report it?" I asked. "I tried, but he threatened to destroy my reputation, said he'd make sure I never worked in this town again." Thomas's voice grew quieter. "I had young kids, a mortgage. I took the settlement he offered and walked away. Would you be willing to make a statement to that effect to Detective Kemp?" "Yes," he said without hesitation. It's time someone stopped him. Thomas wasn't the only one. Over the next 2 weeks, others came forward. Former employees, clients, even distant relatives who'd loaned Michael money that was never repaid. Each new revelation built upon the last, creating a comprehensive picture of decades of manipulation and fraud. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding my life. With Martin's help, I found a modest one-bedroom apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Using emergency funds I'd hidden years ago, money Michael knew nothing about, I furnished it simply but comfortably. It wasn't my house of 35 years, but it was mine, and it was safe. I also started volunteer work at the local library 3 mornings a week. The routine gave structure to my days, and the work itself, organizing books, helping with children's reading programs, brought unexpected joy. 3 weeks after the confrontation, Rebecca called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Helen," she began, her voice hollow. I don't know what to say." "Then perhaps you shouldn't say anything," I replied evenly. "Please, just listen. Michael has been different these past years. Stressed about money, obsessed with appearances. I went along with things I shouldn't have because it was easier than fighting." She paused. "I'm not defending what we did. I just want you to know that I'm sorry for my part in it." "Is that all?" I asked. "No. I'm filing for divorce. I can't stay with him after this. The children won't speak to him. Our friends have all disappeared. The business is collapsing. Everything's falling apart." I felt no satisfaction at her pain, just a weary acknowledgement of inevitability. "And you're telling me this because I thought you should know, and because," her voice broke slightly, "because despite everything, Lily and Justin need their grandmother. They're the innocent ones in all this." On that point, at least, we agreed. The following Sunday, I invited my grandchildren to my new apartment for lunch. Lily arrived first, hovering awkwardly in the doorway until I pulled her into a hug. Justin came shortly after, bringing flowers and a homemade card. We ate sandwiches and talked carefully around the edges of what had happened, focusing instead on their studies, their friends, their plans. It wasn't until dessert that Lily finally asked the question they'd both been avoiding. "Grandma, will Dad go to jail?" I set down my fork. "It's likely, yes. The evidence is very clear." "How long?" Justin asked. "Martin believes with a plea deal. Perhaps 2 to 3 years. I looked at their troubled faces. "I know this is difficult for you both. Whatever you feel, anger, confusion, grief, it's all valid. Your father did something wrong, serious wrong, but he's still your father. He lied to us our whole lives," Lily said, tears forming. "Everything was fake. The business success, the house, college tuition. He even told everyone at my school he bought me my car. But it was really you, wasn't it?" I nodded. "I don't know how to feel," she continued. "I'm so angry, but I'm also scared for him. And I feel guilty for being scared for him when he did such awful things to you." I reached across the table and took her hand. "You don't have to choose a single feeling and stick with it. This is complicated. It's messy. Family always is." Justin had been quiet, but now he spoke. "Dad called me yesterday, asking for money. Said his accounts are frozen and he can't pay his lawyer." His expression was troubled. I hung up on him. You don't owe him anything, I said gently. Not money, not forgiveness, not even a conversation if you're not ready. What about you? Lily asked. Do you hate him? The question hung in the air between us. I considered my answer carefully. No, I said finally. I don't hate him. I'm disappointed. I'm hurt. I'm angry at the choices he made. But most of all, I'm determined to live the rest of my life on my own terms. That doesn't require hatred. After they left, promising to return the following weekend, I sat alone in my small living room. On the wall hung a single photograph, Michael at 7, missing his front teeth, arm in a cast, smiling despite the pain. I'd kept it not out of sentimentality, but as a reminder of the lesson he'd never truly learned. That night, I received a text from Michael, the first direct communication I'd allowed through since the confrontation. Mom, please. I'm being destroyed. Everything I built is gone. My lawyer says without a settlement I could get 10 years. I'm begging you. We're family. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling neither triumph nor regret, just a calm certainty. Then I typed 6 words and pressed send. Sometimes the consequence is the lesson. Then I blocked his number. The next morning I woke early and made coffee. I had a meeting with Martin to discuss the civil case, then my volunteer shift at the library, and later lunch with Dorothy. My new life was taking shape, day by day, brick by brick. As I sipped my coffee by the window, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, I realized something important. This wasn't just about justice or revenge or even protection. It was about reclaiming my power, and no one would ever take that from me again. 8 months passed like turning pages in a book, some days lingering, others flying by unnoticed. Winter surrendered to spring, and spring blossomed into summer. My life settled into new rhythms, different from before but increasingly comfortable. My volunteer work at the library expanded to 4 days a week. I joined a book club, made new friends, and even started taking a watercolor class on Thursday evenings, something I'd always wanted to try but never found time for when raising Michael. The legal proceedings continued their methodical progression. Michael eventually accepted a plea deal: 3 years in a minimum security facility, restitution of all stolen funds, and 5 years of probation upon release. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for September, on my 61st birthday. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Will you attend the hearing? Martin asked during one of our meetings. No, I decided. I've said everything I need to say to Michael. Rebecca finalized her divorce quickly, eager to distance herself from the scandal. She moved to Arizona to live with her sister, leaving behind the house and most of their possessions. The court ordered the house sold, with proceeds going toward my restitution. I drove past it occasionally, watching as the foreclosure sign gave way to for sale, and finally to sold. New owners moved in, a young couple with a toddler and a dog. Sometimes, when I walked through the neighborhood, I'd see them in the yard, planting flowers where my garden used to be. It hurt less than I expected. Justin completed his sophomore year of college with honors and stayed for summer classes, determined to graduate early. Lily, who had moved in with her best friend's family to finish high school, visited me every Sunday. We would cook together, something we'd never done before, learning to make pasta from scratch or experimenting with curries. I applied to State University, she told me one Sunday in July. Same as Justin. That's wonderful, I said, genuinely pleased. Have you decided on a major? Social work, she replied, looking up from the dough she was kneading. I want to help people who've been taken advantage of, like you were. I touched her flour-dusted cheek gently. You're going to do great things, Lily. The criminal case against Michael attracted attention from a local journalist named Sarah Jones, who specialized in elder abuse issues. She approached me for an interview, which I initially declined. But after consideration, I agreed to meet her, not to discuss Michael specifically, but to talk about the broader issue. Financial elder abuse is America's hidden epidemic, Sarah explained over coffee at my apartment. Especially when perpetrated by family members. Victims often stay silent out of shame or fear of destroying family relationships. Or because they keep hoping things will change, I added. That the person they raised will somehow return to who they used to be. Sarah nodded. Exactly. Would you be willing to share your story? It might help others recognize the warning signs before it's too late. I thought about all the careful documentation, the quiet preparation, the moment of finally standing up for myself. Yes, I decided, but not as a victim, as someone who fought back. The article, when published, generated more response than either of us expected. Emails and letters arrived from across the state. Elderly parents sharing similar experiences, adult children recognizing patterns in their siblings' behavior, social workers seeking advice for their clients. With Sarah's encouragement, I started a support group that met monthly at the library. We called it Reclaiming Power, and though we began with just 4 members, by summer's end we had 15 regular attendees. "You've found your calling," Dorothy remarked after sitting in on one of the meetings. "Look at you, Helen Wilson, advocate and community organizer." I laughed. "Hardly. I'm just someone who learned a hard lesson and wants to save others the trouble." But there was truth in what she said. For the first time in decades, I felt purposeful in a way that had nothing to do with supporting or enabling someone else. I was living for myself, and the sensation was both foreign and exhilarating. 2 weeks before Michael's sentencing, I received a letter from him, passed through Martin to ensure it didn't violate the restraining order. I let it sit unopened on my kitchen table for 3 days before finally reading it. "Mom, by the time you read this, I'll have less than a month of freedom left. I've lost everything: my business, my marriage, my home, my reputation. I'll spend my 60th birthday in prison because of what I did to you. I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I know you well enough to know you wouldn't give it anyway. But I want you to know that I understand now. About consequences, about responsibility, about the things you tried to teach me that I refused to learn. When I was a child and Dad left, you told me it wasn't my fault. You shouldered the blame, the pain, the work, everything. Maybe that's where it started. My belief that someone else would always carry my burdens, that I was entitled to take without giving back. You were the only person who ever truly loved me unconditionally, and I repaid that love with betrayal. I don't expect a response. I just needed to say these things before I go away. Michael." I folded the letter carefully and placed it back in its envelope. Perhaps in another life, another time, these words might have moved me to tears or reconciliation. But I had learned to recognize the difference between genuine remorse and the desperate words of someone finally facing consequences. Michael had lived 58 years without understanding what it meant to truly take responsibility. 3 years in prison wouldn't change that. Some lessons come too late. On the morning of my 61st birthday, the day of Michael's sentencing, I woke early and drove to the coast. The beach was nearly empty at that hour, just a few joggers and an elderly couple walking their dog. I found a quiet spot near the water and sat watching the waves. A year ago today, I had opened my door to betrayal. I had stood in my home of 3 decades as my son smirked and told me I had signed it all away. I had felt the ground shift beneath my feet. Not because I was surprised, but because the moment I had been preparing for had finally arrived. My phone buzzed with birthday messages from Justin and Lily, from Dorothy and Martin, from new friends and support group members. Later, we would gather for dinner at my apartment, a small celebration, nothing elaborate, but filled with people who genuinely cared about my well-being. As the sun climbed higher, I closed my eyes and allowed myself to imagine Michael standing before the judge, hearing his sentence pronounced, being led away in handcuffs. I waited for satisfaction, for vindication, for some sense of triumph to wash over me. Instead, I felt something else entirely: freedom. Freedom from the crushing weight of unconditional support that had defined my life for too long. Freedom from the cycle of giving without receiving, of loving without reciprocation. Freedom from the desperate hope that someday, somehow, my son would become the person I had raised him to be. I stood and brushed the sand from my clothes. The tide was coming in, waves erasing footprints along the shore. Nothing lasted forever. Not pain, not betrayal, not even the deep, complicated love between parent and child. Walking back to my car, I made a decision. When I returned home, I would take the single photograph of Michael from my wall and pack it away. not in anger or spite, but as acknowledgement that some chapters must close before others can begin. My 61st year would be about looking forward, not back. About building, not rebuilding. About choosing joy instead of justification. As I drove home along the coastal highway, windows down and music playing, I realized that the revenge I had so carefully orchestrated had given me something unexpected. Not just justice for what was taken, but recovery of something I had surrendered long before Michael's betrayal. Myself. The woman who had raised a child alone, who had worked multiple jobs and built a life from nothing, who had survived disappointment and abandonment without becoming bitter. She had been there all along, waiting patiently to reemerge. My son had taken my house, my money, my trust. But in pursuing justice, I had reclaimed something far more valuable than any possession. I had reclaimed me, and no one, not Michael, not life's disappointments, not age or circumstance, would ever take that away again. When I arrived at my apartment, there was a small package waiting by my door. No return address, just my name in unfamiliar handwriting. Inside was a simple silver bracelet with a single charm, a phoenix rising from ashes. Wrapped around it was a note that read, "From the Tuesday group, for the woman who showed us all how to rise." I slipped it onto my wrist, feeling its comfortable weight as I unlocked my door and stepped inside. The afternoon light streamed through windows I had chosen, illuminating a life I had built on my own terms. On my kitchen table, I spread out watercolor paper and mixed fresh paints. Today, on my 61st birthday, I would begin a new picture, not of what was lost, but of what was found. And as my brush touched paper, creating the first bold strokes of color, I smiled. This was just the beginning.